Maybe I should just be in the like a reveal,
Plant lovers only.
a plant reveal.
There we go.
I would like it to be close to me so I can
Yeah.
just use it as a prop.
It's coming in. It's coming in.
Do I get a
All right.
reveal?
He's emerging. And he's emerging. Oh, there he is. Hello. Ashley, who do we have with us today?
Well, this is Dan Gordon, and he is a filmmaker, documentarian, and also the way that we connected was through your nonprofit, Gordon Education Initiatives for the Performing Arts, right? Yeah.
That's correct.
So yeah, tell us the story of your journey into the performing arts.
Okay. Well, when I was in... Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone out there.
Hello.
When I was in 6th grade, I had a speech impediment. I didn't pronounce my THs and my S's very well. And my father said, you know what, we're going to sign him up for an acting class. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And no Shakespeare. It's too confusing for me. Well, this was in Columbia, South Carolina, and it was at a community theater. And the second I stepped into the class, I'm like, these are my people.
Nice.
They were very creative and expressive. And lo and behold, I fell in love with Shakespeare.
Nice.
When I was 11 years old. I even still remember my first Shakespeare monologue. It was Capulet from Romeo and Juliet. The God's bread, it makes me mad. Some 11-year-old kid is doing this father figure. And I learned about improvisation, and I bonded with all these people. And I feel like I accessed this part of myself that I had never accessed before. It was creative, it was fun, it was collaborative, it's challenging, text analysis, and that was my gateway into it. My first play was the best Christmas pageant ever, and I was Jewish doing this play. Well, a lot of the great Jewish playwrights wrote Christian plays, and I continued on through middle school. And then by high school, I took it super seriously, and I started going to these summer programs, like where I'm studying theater intensively for 5 weeks, Stanislavski or Meisner or Strasberg. And then my father, at this point, we were moving from South Carolina to Texas because he was changing universities. He's an anthropology professor. And I was like, I don't want to go to Texas. I kicked and screamed all the way there, but the caveat was, there was a performing arts high school there, and I got to do theater half the day. And I was finally able to really dive into my passion and I was surrounded by people just like me. And we're in South Carolina. I was like probably the only kid who had blue hair. When I went to performing arts high school, everyone had blue hair or was creatively dressed. And it felt really at home. And when I was 18 or 17, 18, I was so inspired by reading Neil Simon's work. And I said, hey, I got all my friends together. I was like, hey, let's put on a play. We don't have a space. Let's put it on our back porch. So my dad let me take over the house for the summer, and we rehearsed in my bedroom when it rained, and we put up, we went dumpster diving for props and set pieces, and we literally put a play on my back porch. So at this young age, I was also learning that you can create with nothing. And it will relate to my teaching soon because I'm trying to teach kids the same thing. And I ran this company for about 10 years. So you asked, I started doing filmmaking. My real start was theater, and it still is one of my first loves. And I majored in theater in college, and I was an actor in New York for a while, still running the theater company. And ever since I graduated high school, I started teaching. I needed to find a job that made money, but also something I enjoyed doing. And I haven't stopped teaching since. I love to inspire young people in the arts. I love the transformation that happens. And then, the rest is history. I started the nonprofit. I could go into that more if you like.
I want to jump in, though.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the speech impediment. When did you notice that it was actually helping or working? When did you notice that it was having a positive effect for you?
That's a great question. To be honest, I don't think I even thought about it because I was so involved in what I was doing. I was so involved in the text, my father was not like, oh, your speech is getting better. I think he's like, oh, he's going to be fine now.
Okay.
I think you improve just by being engaged in the art itself.
Yeah.
Theater can help any number of ways, including
Well,
in
I think
speech
about
therapy.
there's a lot of young people out there who struggle not just with a speech impediment, but maybe they're on the quote unquote spectrum, which fails to encompass the full nature of, let's say, autism and things like that. But yeah, I think just the doing, it seems, whether it's singing or performing, has this incredible effect to sort of supersede these things.
Yes, and we teach people on the spectrum too in theater, and we've taught in schools that are 100% of the people are on the spectrum. Just the act of doing it, forces them to be able to speak. I've even taught in schools where some of the kids are only partially verbal, and they're improving their speech, but they're not thinking about improving their speech. They're improving on it. I want to get this line right. I want to do a good job in my role. So when you think about how do you improve speech, we really focus on like pronouncing this letter, or should we just give them a monologue to do, and give them something they're excited about.
Right.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And you were, I believe, segueing into the nonprofit work. But maybe go back to Texas. Take us there. Is it Houston mostly in Texas?
Houston, Texas.
Tell us a little bit about Houston, and then you can bring us back up to the nonprofit work.
Okay, Houston's flat, and it's very culturally diverse. So, like, there's a Vietnamese district, there's a Chinese district, there's an Indian district, there's wonderful Nigerian food. It's one of the most diverse cities in the country, actually. But it was also fertile ground to create. Like, there's resources and then there's funding. It's not the best politically. I can't imagine any creative would want to be like, let's move to Texas and raise a family. My goodness. But like, people do.
Yeah.
And it really launched my career. So I have a lot to be thankful for in Texas. And still, like, we get statewide funding, we get citywide funding.
Cool.
And we ran that theater company for 10 years. We eventually moved into professional theaters, but the idea is that we created this with like our blood and sweat on the back porch of a house when we were 17 and 18 years old.
What were those earliest productions? Do you remember?
Yeah, of course.
What was it?
First one was Brighton Beach Memoirs. I don't know if you're familiar with Neil Simon at all, but yeah, I loved Neil Simon. I'm Jewish. I could understand that whole, northeastern Jewish shtick, and the grandparents coming from World War II, all that. And then we did a lot of socially conscious work. We did Waiting for Lefty and Clifford Odets play. One of my favorite productions with Baum and Gilead by Lanford Wilson. This was a 25-person cast.
Wow.
And we had 5-year-olds in the cast, and we had people in their 60s in the cast.
Nice.
And it takes place at an all-night diner in New York City. And what Lanford Wilson did on this piece, he listened while he wrote the dialogue of what he heard around the diner, and put that into a play. I played a heroin addict in the play. I didn't know anything about being a heroin addict, but I did the.
You didn't go full method as a child.
No. But I did go to Narcotics Anonymous meetings. I did just to see what it was like. I was 20 years old. I was into method a little bit. I was in college studying Stanislavski.
Right. Okay.
And I did go hang out on Fairview just to see like what it was like. I didn't want to come across as false. My father is an anthropologist. He's like, no, you really gotta get in there. I was reading William Burroughs. I was
Nice.
I was trying to really figure out the physicality of what it was as well, in addition to the literary. So I always became a physical actor.
Cool.
And we ran that company, and even though we were living in different parts of the country, we would always come back to Houston and produce a show, all the way up into 2013. And it was wonderful. And we some summers we made money, some summers we didn't, but it was cathartic for us. That same feeling I had when I stepped into that room in 6th grade of like, these are my people. That's the same thing as what I felt every summer when I was surrounded by these friends putting on a play. And I think all the people who are listening out there, those theater people, will understand what that's like.
I just had an interesting thought, if I can share, and then Ashley, please take it. Steven Spielberg has a movie coming out this summer, and he started making films when he was very young. And his father Both his parents were very supportive. You know, he made the Fabelmans movie. You can see, you know, the dichotomy and energies between his parents. But he was making films with his friends as a young person. And early in his career, and even to a degree still now, but really earlier in his career, he was lauded for getting great performances out of children. Drew Barrymore, and the list goes on. The young kid in E.T., and you know, there's other examples of that. But I just had the thought that perhaps if you start with theater or filmmaking when you are yourself a child, by the time you become an adult, you're able to establish a better rapport with young people. And I'm wondering how you feel about that. Do you think there's like a correlation there? I mean, you're working with a lot of young people now. Do you feel like because you were working with the craft in whatever way when you yourself were young, that it allows you to tap into young people now?
Oh, absolutely. I think you tapped on something very important, because one of the pillars of our nonprofit is play. And it's something as an artist you always have to have. That almost that childlike wonder. What can we envision? What can we create? Yeah. And so when I was an 18-year-old envisioning, we're going to do a play in the backyard. And so now when I teach kids filmmaking. Where do you want your play to take place? On Mars, under the water. We want to go back in time. Great, let's do it.
Yes.
Like I just did a play, and they're like, okay, it's like an apocalyptic world, and there's these characters called the Moonsters and the Sunsters. Nice. I'm like, yes. Yeah. We just say yes to whatever they want to do, and we make their visions come to life.
It's like West Side Story on the moon or something.
You can
nice.
Imagine. Yeah.
It's like I'm a moonster.
Shout out to Warren Dual Language Academy for their movie.
All right, so you're back in Houston, and are you jumping back and forth a lot between, even perhaps now it seems, but were you always kind of moving back and forth between New York and Houston? Tell us a little bit about like these two cities for you. How often, and even when you're 20 years old and going to school, was there still a lot of that happening?
There was. I don't know how interesting it is, my back and forth, but when I was 24, I moved to Williamsburg, Brooklyn, South 2nd and Havemeyer.
Oh, yeah.
Great block. And I came to do theater. I came to be an actor, and I didn't have a place in Texas at that time. And I pretty much lived in New York, Brooklyn, all the way up until about 2021 when I got a place down in Houston as well. So now I go back and forth.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
And but my father's down there. I would like to be close to him. Mm-hmm. And my nonprofit is also headquartered there. So I run the programs there, but we also run programs here in New York City.
Very cool.
So my dream is to like establish a larger base in New York City and Houston, so we can have programs running concurrently.
Tell us about the origins of the nonprofit.
So in 2014, I had this vision because I was teaching kids theater, and I realized how important and how transformative it was. The same way you talked about, that sense of imagination and play. I thought, what if we could democratize this? So I came up with the idea of a kids' TV show called Take the Stage. And it was basically an after-school, the TV show takes place in an after-school performing arts camp, and the kids go on adventures, and each episode focuses on a different performing art, but they overcome personal challenges like jealousy or not speaking English perfectly or bullying, so they deal with personal issues. And we created this pilot, and we also created these shorter versions of the show to use in schools that use the arts to teach academics. And it aired on PBS in Houston, and I was like, okay. And the smaller episodes did really well, more than the larger episodes. And at this time, I was reading a lot of books on kids television because I really wanted to think about democratizing arts education. And I read this book called Street Gang, and I read about Lloyd Morissette, who was really the founder of Sesame Street before Jim Henson. And I looked him up, and he was still alive. He was in his 80s. And he passed a couple years ago, actually. And I got in touch with him. I said, I would love some advice. How do I do this? He was like, I don't know anyone working at Sesame Street anymore except Carol-Lynn Parente. And so I looked up who Carol-Lynn Parente was. Lo and behold, she's the executive producer of Sesame Street.
All right.
He put me in touch with her.
Nice.
And now I'm have this grand idea of a TV show, never produced TV before, speaking with the woman who has created, who is the producer of Sesame Street. Yeah. And she said, Dan, and we had a great conversation. We met on the Upper West Side over coffee. Said, Dan, you caught me at a good time. I'm leaving Sesame Street. Let's work together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
she wanted to make a leap to help you out.
She made a leap to help out.
Look at that timing.
She came to Houston twice.
Wow.
Yeah, from New York to help me out.
Incredible.
It was really, really cool. And we became friends, and we just hung out, and she gave me wonderful advice. She was there on set with me while we were directing Take the Stage in Houston in 2017. Mm-hmm. And she wasn't just like a consultant, here's some advice. No, she read the script, she gave feedback. She didn't have to do that. And we paid her, but
Yeah. No doubt. What's your favorite Sesame Street character?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, Snuffleupagus.
It's tough.
Snuffleupagus are sweet, but Big Bird has gone on so many adventures. What about your Sesame Street character?
I think I like Oscar the Grouch.
Okay.
Yeah. I can be grouchy. I can be fun, but I've got my Oscar the Grouch. So Ashley's laughing. She's like, I've seen it.
Do you have your Oscar the Grouch impression?
I don't, but I have the Kurt Grouch. I got to tap back into Sesame Street. Let me just pause for a second, and maybe this is not your expertise. I just want to hold up here, right? Because and we'll make sure to get right back to the production of this, which is, in just sort of doing a little research before this, obviously, and let's not get lost in the new administration, but it seems like the GOP, the Republican Party, for years have had a vendetta against PBS, and also the sort of parent organization that funds PBS and their equivalents, right? So that parent organization has been almost completely defunded, if not entirely defunded. And PBS currently, which still operates, is largely funded by various sort of private donors and other organizations. So it's no longer federally funded for the most part, if not entirely funded by private supporters and donors and things like that. So it's just an interesting thing to just sort of break down, right? It's like there are so many things that we're spending money on that are dubious in nature, and it's like the absolute animosity from the GOP and Republican Party, and I'm not like, I don't throw everything under the bus there. I'm not trying to be political, but it's just like an almost irrational hatred of PBS and their programming, and yes, leaning slightly left, I'm sure, largely, but to think of like what Sesame Street has done for children, not just in the United States, but around the world, to constantly be coming under fire is insane. So I'm bringing all this up to say, even working with PBS yourself, and we're going to get back, what was that like for you, perhaps with the nonprofit or working with this organization? Did you see for yourself fears in terms of funding or whether or not it sort of survives? Like, tell me a little bit about that. Maybe right now what you've seen, and then maybe before the most recent election, just in terms of PBS as a healthy body. What was your experience there?
Well, sure. For right now, for all the local PBS stations, they lost probably 10 to 20% of their budget, and they're having to frantically make that up. So if you're watching, donate to your local PBS station or NPR station.
Or if you're watching PBS, maybe talk to us at Good Standing about how we can maybe do that in an even more creative way, perhaps, too. So I'm piggybacking
donate
on
to that too.
No, not to us, but we'll tell you how Good Standing works. Give us a call. All right. Sorry. So go ahead.
No, but so we haven't been affected too much. Like I've had one of the films I made aired on PBS as well, but this was the Corporation for Public Broadcasting as an entity, and it was like half Republicans, half Democrats, and it's always been funded. And So it's really unfortunate because the values that they were teaching were compassion and empathy. They're not teaching capitalism, you know?
Yes.
So
they're not teaching the military-industrial complex.
No. And so the values that PBS was teaching was probably threatening to the narrative that the current administration is. You know, acceptance of all people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you look at Sesame, look at the cast of characters with disabilities. They were brilliant. They had people that were incarcerated, people who have lost parents, people who have been displaced because of hurricanes. You know, Sesame Street hit it all. And now there's a lot of other good PBS shows like Skillsville and Hero Elementary. These are other shows that Carol-Lynn has worked on. And Odd Squad, you know, brilliant.
Okay.
But so my experience, because I don't get a lot of funding from CPB, but I've seen a lot of cutting of staff locally for the PBS and NPR stations. So it's disconcerting.
Yeah. All right. So Carol-Lynn is not just giving you notes, but she's helping to almost, maybe not show run, but maybe acting slightly in that sort of capacity. But maybe give us a couple of her notes. Did she say, hey, maybe this, or did she give you any good notes that you remember?
Let me think of some good things that she gave me. I think, okay, I was coming from a theater background, going into film. Film, you can cut and just take off where you left off. Theater, I'm like, oh, we got to do from the beginning. So I was doing a little bit of theater directing on the film set, and I was like, from like the TV director was like, all right, Dan, we don't need to do that again.
Yeah, we'll work that out later.
But she was basically helping me synthesize the scripts, really like pare it down. You can be more economical with language, really putting powerful words in there, powerful verbs, building characters, and making it entertaining for the kids. Because it doesn't matter how educational it is. If it's not entertaining, kids are not watching it. So she was very big on that.
Yeah.
So I ran that Take the Stage. We did a couple seasons, and people can still watch it all over the country, and people do on PBS LearningMedia.org.
Great.
But it's not a great business model because it doesn't get revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
You got thoughts, Ash?
Yeah, so tell us about some of the educational programs you're doing now. I know you have a full summer lineup, so maybe talk us through like what those programs are and the evolution of those.
Yeah, this is a brilliant segue. So with Take the Stage, I was making media for kids. So in 2022, I was like, you know what? Instead of us making media for kids, and even though we're kids in the Take the Stage videos, let's have kids think of the media they want to create, and let's give them cameras. Let's give them the lighting equipment. Let's let them design the costume. Let's hear from exactly what they want to do. So in 2022, I piloted a program at a school, and it caught fire. Like, yes, we want more of that. And we expanded from we work in schools, we work in museums, and we work in juvenile detention centers. And it began with just me, and now I got a roster of maybe 6 or 7 teachers that are in and teaching these filmmaking curriculum.
Amazing.
And we make a film from concept to premiere in 10 classes.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Over the course of how many weeks or
it could be 2
months?
classes a week. It
Okay.
could be 3 classes a week for 3 weeks.
So they can make the schedule, but they're going to get 10 classes.
They're going to get 10 classes. Sometimes we go 10 to 15, depending. But it's incredible. Like, they choose the genre. They're learning how to write. Like you wrote a screenplay, like, and how to write the screenplay format.
You give them the story by Bob Mackey.
Yeah,
and you say,
right,
go. Just
I do that. We use the hero's journey.
Oh yeah.
So
great.
we do Ordinary World. We do Crossing the Threshold. We do The Ordeal, Test Enemies Allies. And so they learn story structure.
Great.
And as kids, so they're not just learning how to make a film, they're learning how to tell their story, they're learning how to express their voices. Some of the more powerful experiences is our work in the juvenile detention centers.
Yeah.
So we've worked at the juvenile detention center here in Brooklyn, but also the ones in Houston.
Amazing. What is it one name for this particular program, or does it differ if you're working with juveniles in detention centers and maybe folks who are not in those? Is it the same program that you just can transfer depending on where you go?
Yeah.
What are you calling the program?
we can crowdsource some names right now. right now
it's like Dan's got a film program for young people.
It's Gordon Education Filmmaking.
Oh, all right. I like that. It's straightforward.
But it's used for different purposes. So when we're in the Juvenile Detention Center, we're using filmmaking for an intervention strategy.
No doubt.
Filmmaking helps these young people change their lives. It helps them emotionally regulate. It helps them find a creative outlet.
Yeah.
It reduces recidivism. But when I'm in schools, it might be a different outlet. It's more about creative expression. We just partnered with a history class. We did a filmmaking about, the American Revolution and, the Boston Tea Party and all that. So we just partnered with a Spanish language arts class. We created 2 films completely in Spanish for 6th graders. So, the goals can be intervention. The goals can be education. The goals can be creative expression. And then we also have summer camps as well.
I think a lot of juvenile messaging has been this scared straight model, which is like actual incarcerated or formerly incarcerated individuals who, by the way, we apparently now say justice impacted individuals. I don't know if you're aware.
Justice involved youth. Yeah.
Justice involved youth would come in and speak to the dangers, if not the horrors, of what it means to be in prison. But I guess what I'm saying is, it seems a little outdated. It seems like that's a vestige of the 20th century, this model, the scared straight model, which would also show up on TV. Like there was a period, I think, in the early 2000s where you could actually watch these like scared straight episodes. So what I'm saying is it seems like perhaps that is a bit prehistoric, the scared straight model, and what could perhaps be more beneficial to these young people is actually doing something productive. It's actually kind of in line with what we were saying about young people who are nonverbal or have various speech impediments, where if you're just like drilling the thing into the person as opposed to giving them a positive outlet, it might not be as productive. So I guess what I'm really saying is, what was your doorway into doing this work with juveniles in these detention centers? How did you even get on their radar? Did they come to you? How did that start?
That's a good question. I first had my first touch point, and I agree with you. In 2010, a fellow actor said, I'm working at this halfway home. Why don't you come do a theater program with me? And I loved the program. That was theater. And then I saw a grant opportunity in 2022 or 2021 for like public safety and with the state of Texas. And I was thinking, well, I've already done a program in schools. I can just transfer that to the juvenile detention center. So I wrote them an email, said, I got this program, it's tested, I've done successful. They're like, yes, we would love arts programming. And the first time in, I was a little scared straight, Okay. You go in and I'm, a white guy, and they're like, who is this guy, And it's like, what? And they're like, and you're going to teach me filmmaking? They're like, yeah,
Yeah.
And my first program I did, I had to figure it out. You can't just come in with a curriculum and say, this is what we're going to do, this is what's on the board. You have to listen to them. And one thing, you have to build trust. Yeah. Some days you maybe decide, you know what, throw away the curriculum, let's just chat, let's just get to know each other, let's just trust me, let me just human to human, right? Mm-hmm. But I began this program saying, what music are you into? What do you like to listen to? Get them to share with me. One kid said, I love Tupac Shakur. I'm like, you like Tupac? And I'm like, Tupac's like back in my day or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, cool, you like Tupac. I went to the library, I got The Rose That Grew from the Crack in the Concrete, the book that his mother posthumously published. I said, okay, let's bring out our hymnal today, and let's turn to page 64, and let's read one of Tupac's poems. And we started reading his poetry, and then we started getting inspired. We're like, okay, great.
Nice.
We understand what Tupac liked. Let's write our own poems around that. So we started writing our own poems. So it happened very organically. I didn't say, this is our filmmaking. I said, okay, so we got poems. And I said, well, what if we make a film, but their poetry is what's driving it? And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what do you want to make a film about? And one kid says, let's make a film about a guy, 16, father left him, his mother's addicted to crack. And everyone's like, yeah, that sounds about right. Cool. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, and he's going to prison too. I'm like, okay. And everyone's like, yeah. And then he's got a younger sibling. So everyone was just nodding in agreement. They wanted to tell their own story. This is a kind of a universal story. And it was all narrated by their poetry.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
And is some of this content out in the world, or does a lot of this programming sort of stay behind closed doors? It might be a little more sensitive than some of the other.
Yeah, so I don't publish a lot of it, but if you ask for it, I can send you a link. I do have some public talks where I do show it. In the first few residencies, they are wearing masks because you're not allowed to see their faces because, they're underage.
That's right.
So
Interesting.
I got full face masks for them, and then I got Commedia dell'arte masks when I did the one in Brooklyn because we were allowed to show their faces at least because when I did a full face mask, it was muffled, and I was like, this is not great. Or we had to do voiceovers.
Yeah. You just get them all the Batman cowl, and it's like you're set.
No, it's totally.
Are they making the film collaboratively, or is the program now they make their own films and share?
They make the film collaboratively. It's a wonderful question. So we're all working together. We're all writing it together. I teach them how to hold the camera. They're like, roll camera speed, roll audio speed. Scene one, take one, mark. And so they're running the set.
Do they slide into specific roles? I want to be the boom person. And do they usually stay in those roles, or do you see jumping around in the different filmmaking roles?
Oh, these are great questions. Yeah. So sometimes they're in these probation or detention centers for a while, so I've worked with them, sometimes the same students multiple times. Sometimes they'll have a small role, so you know what, I want to take the lead now. But one story I have is you don't always choose the likely candidate to be the lead. So there was one guy, and he was just so disruptive. He would stand up. I said, can you please sit down? He's like, no. And then he would lie on the ground. I was like, oh my God. And they will test me. They will throw things across the room. I've had people take up a script and throw it, and, look at me, or say to me, I'm going to drop your camera. And they test me. They want to see how far they can go with me, and then after a while they'll trust me. Like, yo, what's up, Mr. D? But you have to build up. So was one kid, and then I was like, okay, who's going to play the lead in this film? And this guy was like, the guy who was standing up and not listening said, I'll play the lead. And I'm like, you can handle it? And you know what? I gave it to him because I was like, he is acting up. He needs something. He needs something to grab onto. And he did fantastic in it.
Nice.
Like, he had we made a film about this guy whose wife was kidnapped, and he was looking for his wife, and it was like an action movie. And then he was emoting. And so much so when we showed the film, a guy who was in detention center with him a year ago saw the film and was like, that's him? Nah, that can't be him. He's not acting like that. Because that's not the tough alpha they saw back in the detention center. They saw a sensitive, emotional person on the screen. Yeah. And the kid who was watching that was so surprised that there was this transformation of this guy who was so disruptive that he found an outlet.
Yeah, transformation and a transference too, where perhaps this other person watching, and this is the power of great film and theater, is you can, by proxy of this performance, tap into not just that emotion, but potentially that behavior. Well, maybe I can do that, or I can see that. So it's sort of amazing. And do you get to leave? Do you get to go out into the field, or is everything shot within a particular facility? Do you have to stay on campus, or can you kind of break out a little bit?
So I've worked at 3 centers before, 2 detention centers and 1 probation center. Probation center, we have a little bit more leeway. We never leave the premises, but the detention center, you are so strict. I'm locked in the room with them. I don't have my phone with me. I don't have anything. If I bring a pencil in there, I have to say I'm bringing a pencil in, because if I lose it, it's now contraband. It's like every room has to be extremely regulated. There's cameras everywhere too.
And I would imagine sometimes limitations are actually good for creativity. Do you find that it actually furthers creativity when you're sort of limited to a specific setting?
That's great. We do better in the more confined detention centers than we do at the probation centers where they can go home, but they're just like, they might have an ankle monitor on or something, but they're allowed to go home because you have a captive audience. They're not going anywhere, right. But they're looking for it. So, yeah, they're hungry for something else, and it's nice because they're no longer viewed as my criminal past or this bad thing I did. They're now known, I'm a filmmaker. Yeah, I did that. I did that, and you see them, this confidence that they come up with. So we do have limitations, and then we do bring in props and costumes, but every prop we bring in, especially the one in Brooklyn, we have to check in, we have to check it out, There's one in Texas that I work on. They have a more outdoor area. There's a horse, which is really nice, and there's a field, so. Oh, wow. But I've been to some really not nice ones too, just touring, and they don't see much daylight at all, and they're really sad because I think the system is set up to not rehabilitate, it's to punish, and that doesn't always help.
Yeah. What are you thinking about, Ash?
So filmmaking and this creative expression as a form of healing, as a form of maybe having an alternative experience, and being so immersed in that yourself, do you look out to the broader world of filmmaking or Hollywood, if they even call it that anymore? And do you ever sort of think about, like, is there a discrepancy between these two things? Even sort of the medium is the same. Do you have sort of like hopes and dreams for the industry? Do you think about that?
I was just thinking about that question because right now I'm working on a film on gun violence, right? And so many of the films I see on gun violence are about the tragedy of it. They're not about the healing and the solutions for it. And we're very, as a nonprofit, we're very solutions based. We're looking at purpose. But I saw the Oscar-nominated short documentaries and found brilliant. But I was just devastated. I was like, "There's no hope for the world. We're doomed. We're doomed." Yeah. But with my nonprofit, I do want to give people some hope. I would do want to find solutions out there, because if we have a chance, going. So that's the kind of work I'm focused on. Yeah. Granted, it is good to show the horrors of what happens because we need to truly understand it. But where my mission is like, how can we emerge from it? How can we get out of this? So in this gun violence film I'm working on, I got hired to do this film actually with young people in Texas, and I've seen mentorship programs that have truly brought students out of the doldrums of incarceration and got them rehabilitated, and these changing of environments that have changed them completely. They've done complete 180s. So that's what I want to show people way out.
Yeah, we've been interested in that too at Good Standing, which is, it seems like, not everybody who does one of these school shootings is actually in the school. It might have been a former student, but some of them are quite often kids who are actually enrolled in the school. Maybe they're not attending as much as they should, but they are. And it just seems like more can be done to identify outliers, identify bullying, identify kids who are struggling with pharmaceuticals, mental health, poverty, sometimes all of the above, all these various factors, their relationship with their parents. Their parents are a bit out to lunch. Maybe they're very busy. They're not malicious, but they're just not very aware of what's happening with their kid. And these things do overlap, maybe not entirely, not all those various things, but there is a lot of overlap. And I just think a lot of the conversation around gun violence is about policy. It's about, whether or not Americans should even have guns, let alone, AR-15s, et cetera, and stuff like that. But I don't personally hear enough, and this is partly what Good Standing is and why we're often speaking to people in the impact space, the nonprofit space, is we're curious what artists, creators, filmmakers, or nonprofit types are doing to bridge these symptomatic components that overlap between school shooters in a preventative, a proactive way. And we don't hear a lot about that, because the big binary policy conversations between red and blue, left and right, as it pertains to gun violence, just soaks up all of the oxygen. It's not that it's not a valid debate. It is a valid debate. It's just that it's not the only thing we need to be discussing. Maybe speak directly, if you can, if you're willing to, the organization that kind of pulled you in. Is this a nonprofit in Texas that deals with gun violence in schools, or just gun violence generally?
So the organization in New York, BuyKids.org, said, hey, Dan, you're a filmmaker. I want you to mentor a kid in Texas who's had experience with gun violence, and I want you to explore this topic. They make films with young people all around the world, in Senegal and South Africa and Colombia, and so I'm making this film. So I've been visiting a lot of young people who have been shot, who've been victims.
It's not just school shooting. It might be anything related.
And it's
to
interesting when you say gun violence, some people automatically go to school shooting. Yeah. Some people go to the south side of Chicago. Some people go to and what I'm primarily focused on is actually not the school shootings. I'm primarily focused on young men who get involved with in rough neighborhoods where they're exposed to gun violence very early. Okay. And so I would like to tackle school shooters eventually, but I think it does. It still speaks to the same topic of, do these young people have the right emotional support and environmental structures to prevent it or not? Because you're talking about parents being out to lunch. I've seen from the young people I've spoken with already, they're 13 years old carrying guns. It's not hard to get a gun, so they should change the laws. I think they should change the laws to make them lower, because that could have prevented the Uvalde shooting. But if you're 18 or 19, you can buy a gun and sell it to a 13-year-old easily. Yeah. I talk to these guys. I've talked to kids that are bringing guns to school. I've talked to kids that are shooting guns at 10 years old. I've talked to people who have seen people die at this age. I've talked to kids who are stealing cars at this. So there's a lot of factors of the causes of it. So there's environmental causes. There are after-school programs. Like, if a kid doesn't have an after-school program to go to, what are they doing with their free time? Do they have that kind of support system? Are their parents there? And do their parents have enough money? Because if they don't, they're in survival mode. And what do you do when you're in survival? You do what you need to survive, no matter what. Not all cases are the same. School shooters are going to have different motivations versus some guy trying to feed his family or this. Right. But a lot of them, not every kid has the support they need.
What has surprised you? How far in are you with this, your latest film, when it deals with gun violence? And maybe it hasn't been that long. How long has it been so far since you've embarked on this new film?
Oh, just about a month and a half. I just chosen the filmmaker, who's 18, and now we've been going around. But what has surprised me?
In the topic, or so there's certainly a lot of noise out there that we've all heard.
I'm surprised how common it is, because I grew up, white, middle class, I'm surprised how common it is to have a gun at such a young age. And so how adept they are and how easy it is to get a gun. I was surprised to see young people pull up their shirt and show me all the bullet wounds they got when they were 14 years old.
Wow, heavy.
It's heavy. I was also surprised by their resilience to overcome it and continue on and still get their GED after that. I was surprised to see them be rehabilitated, to see the resoluteness they need to get out of that mindset and to make a change in their life, because that's not easy. They are starting with 10 steps behind, They have to change their mindset. They have to get a job. Guy I work with, Carlton Harris, he's the executive director of Forgotten Third. He says, you can't tell a kid to put down a gun if you're not giving them something else to pick up.
No doubt.
So I've been surprised by some of their rehabilitation stories. It's not a straight line. They go 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yeah. So we're embarking on this journey with this young person, and we're going to be telling his story, but I'm also going to have him interview other people, his peers, and have them tell their stories as well.
We had a gentleman on who runs a musical nonprofit in San Antonio, Musical Bridges Around the World, gentleman Suhail, who's their advancement director. And we had within that episode, we had a brief discussion about veterans who are often quite good with their hands. They're often struggling with PTSD, or potentially if they're unhoused, or dealing with addiction issues, the sort of classic sort of complex of potential issues. But one of the things he said is, if you hand a veteran, even if he's not or she is not musical, if you give them an instrument, the instrument becomes the mission, and now they're like, oh, I've got this thing now to conquer and develop some sort of rapport, expertise with this thing now, and how that works wonders. Here's a harmonica, here's a guitar, try this trumpet, and it's suddenly like, oh, this is now my mission. And I can sort of bind to this thing in this really interesting way. So when you said you got to give them something else, I was like, wow, it's interesting how that overlap happens too.
No, I see that.
And the overlap of gun culture in America, right, extends outside of certain communities. Obviously,
Sure.
we, in the military world, it's a whole thing there.
Yeah, especially if you've been conditioned to be on, like I say, the military, to be on a mission, to go on a mission.
Right.
If you're conditioned to be in survival mode and do this, what else can you do to fill that gap?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sobering hearing their stories. But at the same time, they're also just kids. They're kids, and they go through the same things kids in a private school go through, relationships, difficulties, or whatever, dealing with their parents. So they're still trying to figure it out. But at the same time, filmmaking is one of those things that can fill the gap. I'm not picking up a gun. I can pick up a video camera, start filming. And I've seen that happen.
Do you have brands that support you, or are there camera, film stock, or whatever it happens to be, who are like, we love what you're doing, we'd love to give you a couple cameras, or we'd love to give you this battery pack, or here's a boom mic, or I'm testing the limits of my own film equipment knowledge here, but are you supported in that way with actual sort of physical items, or is it mostly funding and then you go out and procure these items yourself?
Well, Sony, if you're listening, we run a nonprofit, and we could really use some video cameras, some audio equipment, some boom mics to support the nonprofit work.
Yes.
Very nice.
Thank you, Sony.
There you
or
go.
Canon. Canon's wonderful too.
Yes,
Nikon,
yes.
you know what? Come on.
Our cameras are Sony here. All right. So you can support us too. All right.
So it's all grant funded. So
okay, good.
we get state funding, we get city funding, we get church funding. St. Philip Church has funded us our juvenile justice program for a few years now. We get individual funders, and it's not easy running a nonprofit because you're always writing grants, writing grant reports,
Right, yeah.
showing measures, showing the efficacy.
Yeah.
And what's difficult about efficacy about the juvenile justice program is you can measure success in the short term, behavior improved, but you really want to know 5 years out. Where are they now? How did this program help them? And these longitudinal studies with Sesame Street was able to do these 18-year studies because they haven't been around for so long.
Right.
But it's something that we'd like to get into is these studies. But, mostly grant funded. And thank goodness we've been able to support, get grant funding. But a lot of our revenue comes through tuitions when we do summer camps or after-school programs. That's where most of our tuition comes from. But, maybe that's the next step, looking for more brands, because we really need to expand, and it's tough to balance the budget.
Well, Ashley, I don't know if you want to jump in there, but my next question was expansion, right? Because obviously in the United States, this issue is present, and issues generally in terms of juvenile delinquency and just general incarceration or gang violence in certain cities or whatever it happens to be, just the procurement, the access to guns, etc. So the list goes on in terms of like factors and elements that might drive a young person into the criminal justice system. But I would imagine what you're doing, you could do in many, many places and cities, not just Houston and New York City or Brooklyn, New York. So is that, are you starting to see different places reach out, and are you like, I need more of me? What's your support system look like as you have an eye potentially towards expansion? And are there limits to your expansion? You're like, man, I don't know if I can be in 4 cities, 5 cities. It might be a bit much. Who knows? So what are your thoughts on expansion?
Well, first of all, thank you for this question. Both of you are visionaries. So both of you asked the big, large questions. You're like, you're taking what's, like small. You're like, let's take that. Let's expand it. Let's have more impact. So I like that.
We say social impact at scale.
Yeah. So that's been my issue. Like I'm exhausted running from and one day I remember teaching like at an elementary school, and then an hour later I was at the Juvenile Detention Center, and I like switching in my brain, doing with an 8-year-old dealing with an 18-year-old within like an hour and a half, and I'm like, wow.
Sometimes you don't code switch properly, and a teacher of an 8-year-old is like, Dan, you got to chill out a little bit. It's like, whoa.
Or I tell the 18-year-old to sing a song with me. Right?
Yes.
No, but it's a good question. So we have a curriculum. We've codified a curriculum. We teach it to our teachers. And right now I'm trying to teach teachers to teach in the system, because it's not just teaching filmmaking. You got to learn how to manage young people and what happens if a fight breaks out. Now there's a lot of liabilities, and that has happened with one of my teachers. He was not involved, but it happened between 2 of the young people there. So there's a lot of protocol, and I don't want to send anyone into the Juvenile Detention Center if they're not really prepared. But I think there could be expansion. I think we could do this in major cities. We could also do it in smaller cities. But it'd be nice if there was like a training that I could go, and we had a manager in each cities to run the programs. We could come back once a year to see how, have a conference. That would be a nice 5 to 10 year plan. But I think we need really one of the harder parts is getting in to the detention centers. So, and then when there's a change of staff, you have to reintroduce yourself to everybody. There's a great book called Shakespeare Saved My Life by Laura Bates, and she says she was trying to get in while he was trying to get out, and it's a great book about how Shakespeare changed this guy he had a life sentence in prison. So yeah, I would love to do it with our filmmaking programs at juvenile detention centers, but also our other filmmaking programs as well, to expand. So we're not always like struggling with that one grant or this grant, that we can have a larger ecosystem of national funders. And if CPB and other national programs go by the wayside, we really got to diversify those funding sources. So it's a great question.
No doubt.
Being a filmmaker yourself, and then also doing the educational programs, how have you found the journey of becoming an educator, but also how has that journey of becoming an educator informed your own filmmaking? And do you think that's actually making you a better filmmaker? And then where do you see all of that going in the future?
Right. So I think I'm an educator first before I'm a filmmaker, because that was always when I began at 18 years old. And I see filmmaking driven out of curiosity and wanting to explore. My favorite part of making a film is the actual documentary, is doing it. When I get to interview people, when I get to learn. And then when the film is made, I'm done. But they're like, oh, you got to market it now. You got to show it to festivals. Like that's not that's not as exciting to me. So your question is like, how do I see myself as an educator and a filmmaker? How do I bridge it? Well, I think there's a theme in a lot of my documentary films. There's a theme of youth overcoming. There's a theme of cultural connections, people getting along. There's a theme of trying to understand larger issues, I grabbed a video camera and started making my own film in 2019. I was doing Big Brothers Big Sisters. It's a mentorship program. I'm like, let's do something that's close to me. And I made a documentary with him. Then I made a documentary about a bodega on South 2nd Street. And we had a screening of that on the sidewalk. So then I saw an Indian classical dance performance, and I saw you interviewed someone about Indian classical dance recently, about Bharatanatyam. I have a documentary on PBS that focused on Bharatanatyam dance and a girl having her Arangetram. So that was out of my own curiosity. So a lot of my films are just born out of my own edification, wanting to learn and wanting to share that knowledge with other people. I've been making a film, and hopefully I'll finish this year, following a group of teenagers, Israeli and Palestinian teenagers, since 2022, the same group of kids. I film it once a year, and they're part of a peace building program. That came out of a need to wanting to understand one another. The films I make are not like crime thrillers, they're more about like let's try to understand this more. Let's go deeper into this neighborhood. Let's try to understand nuances of this. Let's see what we don't normally see. That's where my filmmaking is. It comes out of the need of education than me knowing every film theory and all of that. Or film director. I like watching films that way.
I feel pretty good, although I do feel compelled to ask you just like what your favorite play is and what your favorite movie is, and then maybe what your favorite documentary is. A little three, and that's my last three.
Okay, so plays.
Favorite play?
Yeah, so my favorite playwright is Susan Laurie Parks. I think she's brilliant. She does a lot of stuff at the Public Theater. I was thinking about that earlier. I saw Top Dog Underdog, Book of Grace. Brilliant. And the way she writes is poetic, too. And there's a little bit of gun violence in one of those plays, too. Films, I like comedy, too. So I like a lot of Mel Brooks style films, but then I'll get into science fiction, like interstellar stuff. And plays back, I also just saw The Fear of 13 with Adrian Brody on Broadway, and that was about the criminal justice system.
Yeah. Okay.
Favorite filmmaker, Spike Lee. I think he's fantastic. I love his work.
Cool.
I think he has his thumb on the pulse of culture.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. Cool.
So.
Cool. Ashley, you got anything?
I don't. Thank you so much, Dan.
Oh, this has been fun.
No,
At
you were
first, I thought I'm not gonna have anything to say. I was so nervous. I was like, and Ashley was like, Dan, it's fine.
Cool. You did great. You did great. And it seems like you're doing great work out there. What's the best way for people to see some of the stuff you're doing or connect with you or even help fund? What's the best way to get
Go
in
to
touch?
GordonEducation.org, GORDON, education.org. Is it going to be on a screen?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, good. Or me, Dan Gordon, or danjgordon.com. You can see my personal stuff. I need to update it. I'm not really big on the socials, but I'm there too.
Word up. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.